Welcome back. A little history check here. 150 years ago this week, the Civil War essentially ended. Robert E. Lee, he surrendered his sword to Ulysses Grant in Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, and the rest, as we say, is history. The states, they wound up uniting, but the United States right now, and I think even the biggest, brightest optimists would have a hard time saying is united. Some of the battles that were being fought then actually still being fought now. And I'm not talking about muskets and cannons. I'm talking about things like voting rights, equal rights, and the legal right to discriminate. Just this week, yesterday, Springfield, Missouri, voters repealed a law that forbade discrimination against gay people. So just so I'm clear, the law was on the books. You couldn't discriminate against gay people, and they repealed that. Kansas, they're trying to get rid of abortion altogether. Forget about Roe v. Wade here in 2015. That's what's going on. And several other states rolling back things like voting rights, mainly southern ones, and the changes overwhelmingly, as you'd guess, impact black people by making it harder for them to vote. Now, we see this scene here as they played out and remembering like it was 150 years ago. There was different rules, and at least 600,000 people fought and died in a war that was supposed to unite the states here. And I'm not trying to be Ken Burns on us here, but at the same time, if you do step back and you see about the whole fight, if we were a divided country and the idea of you couldn't just have, 13 different rules, 13 different states, and then as we grew as a country, there had to be a united nature to it. It seems that we're going down a trend, Scott, where every state makes up their own rules in effect. And God forbid you go across this state line, you can be discriminated against depending on who you are, and in this state you can't. You can vote with one way this way, you can't vote another one. And I believe in state rights, but we're not talking about on the margin. We're talking about issues on the main here. I don't know. I just don't see how healthy a direction that is for this country to go down.
Well, it's not. On the other hand, these issues are boiling to the surface, and they've always been there. It's a question, I think, a lot of it, I believe, of folks trying to exert themselves where they feel that they're being pressured by the federal government or somebody else to take positions that are contrary to their particular points of view. And the problem with that, of course, is we all become so self-centered. And I mean not just as people, but as people voting against these things, as lawmakers who vote against these things. We've become so, it's kind of like the Rand approach.
But you know what?
Don't bother me.
I get that on Obamacare. But for me, Andrew, these were established law. We had voting rights in this country that we're redebating now who gets to vote and how. They had a law in the books. You can't discriminate against somebody because they're gay. They went out of their way to repeal the law and rewrite it, so they made an exception so they can discriminate against gay people. My point is, it's not just that people are trying to fight changes. They're trying to rewrite the laws. There's, I think, a difference with a distinction.
I agree, and I agree with both you and Scott, and that really infuriates me. So, but I think to a certain degree, yeah, people are trying to rewrite history, and yes, I think people are sort of voting in a very self-centered way. I also think that there's a political pander aspect to all of this, which is that take abortion. I mean, because abortion was settled in this country for about 10, 15 years after Roe v. Wade came out. But there was a feeling by anti-abortion groups that even though they were voting for candidates who were anti-abortion, those candidates weren't doing anything about it. You're just saying you're anti-abortion, but you're not actually taking any steps to roll back abortion. And so they ramped up the pressure on those candidates, and the candidates started responding, and where they can, they're starting to make a push to roll back abortion rights. But I'm not so sure. There are people who are voting on that basis for, to roll back abortion rights. But I'm not so sure there are a lot of candidates that in their heart of hearts, that's the top priority. I think it's a way to pander to those voters while still being able to get the rest of their agenda across. And in a lot of cases, we're talking about conservative Republican agenda, pro-business agenda.
I think Andrew's right. But I think this is filtering into something bigger. It's not just about an issue about voting rights. It's not just an issue about gay rights. I think it permeates into what we see in Washington, where things are so polarized, where it's bad to try and compromise, where it's bad to find common interest. If you yell, you lie in the State of a Union, you get rewarded for it with fundraising. To his point about the pandering and stuff, you got to have some united in the United States, because it doesn't make the machine run. And more than that, I think it further fractures us, and I don't think that's healthy as a country.
Well, pandering with tons of money is never good for democracy.
That's the other.
So
that's
that's
the other
number
ingredient.
one. When you have enough money, you can almost buy anything you want, including politicians and judges, for that matter. But Richard, and this is not race where I'm going. You may interpret it that way, but I think a lot behind this is the Obama movement. Now, that's not just black. I think it scared a lot of people throughout the country. Here in New York, we're cool with things, it appears on the surface, blue state, California. But in most of America, the movement, white, black, progressives, that got behind Obama, that filled stadiums, literally, with 80,000 people for this guy, I think it just scared a lot of people in America. And I think that's what's behind a lot of this.
I would love to keep this conversation going, but I'm up against a break here. Thank you guys very much. When we come back, conversation about Toms River. And for those who don't know, it's a quiet Jersey Shore town, but not long ago it was the subject of a huge controversy, a national issue over industrial pollution and its possible links to cancer.